Hello everybody, my name is Snyderman, and welcome to Snyderman Teaches, a series dedicated to historical events and their importance to modern society. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and leave me a comment down below about what topic you want me to cover next. With that, we're going to do a little bit of learning today. We're going to learn about the Salem Witch Trials. Okay, so the tragic events that occurred in Salem, Massachusetts between January 1692 and May of 1693 resulted in the deaths of 20 people. You had 19 that were executed by hanging, and you had one that was pressed to death. And this was all done in the name of witchcraft. But it's important to know that the fear of witchcraft did not begin in Salem. Europe had been hunting witches down for centuries. In fact, all throughout Europe, we know that there were witch hunts going on between the 1580s and the 1650s. We know that in that time period, 110,000 people were put on trial suspected of being witches. And of those 110,000, 40 to 60,000 of them were executed. And again, this is not an isolated incident in any one European country. This was going on all across the continent of Europe. It's also important to know that the people of Salem were a group of Puritans. What this means is they were people that were seeking to purify the Church of England. They did not agree with the religious teachings that were happening from the Church of England at that point, and so they left. They started settling colonies in the New World, and this particular group that we're talking about finds themselves in the Massachusetts Bay, and they begin the Salem colony. And these Puritans, they bring with them a strict interpretation of the Bible and a heavy belief in predestination. Predestination just means it's already decided before your life even begins where you are going to go after you die. You're either going to go to heaven or hell, and that's already been decided for you. They also, with this belief, or with the strict belief of the Bible, believe that children should not play games. They shouldn't dance. They shouldn't do anything. They basically considered anything fun kind of the idle hands of the devil. They saw the devil everywhere, and they knew in their own minds that the devil was everywhere amongst them and could make deals with people in exchange for their soul, and those individuals would then become witches or wizards that would work for the devil, would work for Satan, and basically do his evil bidding here on earth. Okay, bringing it back to Salem now. With these Puritan beliefs and with this history of witch hunting that they were coming from, they have now an environment that consists of very strained politics and mostly of a religious nature. You have a kind of paranoia that is settling into society, specifically in the government. You have feuds within society. The Puritans were fighting natives who they believed were actually agents of the devil already. You had the people of Salem that are actually going to be fighting each other. And you have a group of bored kids that are tired of the status quo and really aren't allowed to have any fun. And that sets the tone for what happens in Salem. It's important to know that when we talk about Salem, we're really talking about two different Salems. There was Salem Town and Salem Village. Salem Town was a merchant town. It was on the coastline, and it was a big commercial hub in Massachusetts. About 10 miles inland, you had Salem Village, which was a village of about 500 families, and many of them were farmers, and it's going to be the social divide that causes the rift within Salem itself. On top of the clear economic divisions between the rich Salem town and kind of the poorer Salem Village, we have a social division that occurs within Salem Village itself. You have the Porters versus the Putnams. The Porters are a family that are connected to Salem town. They are a very rich, wealthy family that have a lot of connections within the community, the merchant community of Salem town. The Porters are a pretty well-off agriculture family. However, they are seeking to make Salem Village its own independent thing from Salem Town. They want kind of independence, if you will, from Salem Town. And so we have this dispute going on. We have land disputes that are very common within Salem Village. A lot of families and a lot of neighbors arguing over land boundaries, things of that nature. And to make these tensions even worse, the Putnams actually bring in Reverend Samuel Parris to Salem. When Salem was in search of a reverend, it's the Putnams that really push Parris into this position. But what we know about Parris is he was quite the arrogant individual. He keeps the town of Salem waiting for a year before he even accepts the position. And then when he does, finally, he demands a higher salary. He demands that he be given ownership of the church house where he and his family were expected to live, something that was not normally done. And so that actually made a lot of people very upset with him. We also know that through his preachings, he did a lot of kind of scare tactics, very fiery individual, but his arrogance also shone through with his preaching. He would often preach with gold candlesticks all around and doing a lot of shady things that really didn't endear him to a lot of people. He also was accused and is well documented of picking on some of the higher up people in Salem, basically making them pay for their sins, even though they were really kind of ridiculous sins in the mind of most. So he's not really a popular figure. He is a figure that is going to divide Salem even further. And he moves to Salem in 1688 with his wife, 3 kids, his niece, and his 2 slaves, Tituba and her husband, John. Tituba is going to become very important later on in our story. We will talk about Tituba here in a little while. But Parris's role in this story is not over yet. Salem is now thrust into an environment of division, fear, and suspicion. And it's this environment that sets up the perfect situation for the witch hunts, the witch trials that go on in Salem. But it's going to be Parris's daughter, Betty, his niece, Abigail Williams, and their friend Ann Putnam that are going to be the first 3 girls that start accusing people of witchcraft. They are feeling very strange. They fall to a strange illness, according to the people of Salem. The girls are suffering from convulsions, knife-like pains, prickling sensations. There's even an account that one of the girls tried to fly. And a doctor is called in to examine the girls and start figuring out what happened to these girls. And he immediately says, witchcraft. These girls are bewitched. So we need to find out who's responsible. Now, there's a lot of theories out there about what actually happened to these girls, where their symptoms came from. If you want me to go into detail on that in another video, please leave a comment down below and I will make a separate video all about the different theories about what could have caused the girls to become sick. Okay, so now that the girls have an official medical diagnosis of bewitchment, we kind of need a second opinion. So they go to Tituba and they ask her or her husband, history is kind of shaky on this, to make a witch cake. What this is a bread made of a combination of rye and the urine of the affected girls. That bread is then fed to a dog, and it is believed that if the dog exhibits the same symptoms as the girls, then the girls are bewitched. Apparently, this dog did exhibit the same symptoms, and so the Reverend Parris proceeds to ask the girls who bewitched them, and lo and behold, they blame poor Tituba. They blame Tituba, and we now have a false accusation. Tituba has been blamed for witchcraft, and for the next 3 days, Samuel Parris is going to really brutally interrogate Tituba about who is helping her bewitch these girls. He's going to try to get a confession out of Tituba. And what Tituba does next is she is going to blame 2 more people. So now we not only have the idea of one witch terrorizing Salem, we have a group of them. Before we move forward with that, it's important to explain Tituba. Tituba is a really interesting figure in history because we don't really know her background, yet she proves a very important present day role. Tituba could have been an African slave or a Native American slave that came from the island of Barbados in the Caribbean. Either way, Tituba now represents a individual that fell victim to oppression in multiple ways. So that's the importance of Tituba. Tituba not only gives a false confession, she also gives more false accusations. She blames Sarah Good, who is basically the village beggar. She is a woman that is very, very poor and is not involved in the church. So she herself is very disconnected from the community. She also accuses Sarah Osborne, who is a woman that is married to an indentured servant, which automatically disconnects her more from the community. And with these false accusations from Tituba, we get more mass hysteria. The dominoes begin to fall in Salem. More kids and young women begin to claim that they are falling victim to witchcraft. They say they're having visions. They begin blaming others. And this is when Salem now goes to trial. And it's during this trial that these social divisions that were really responsible for the early accusations, those begin breaking down. In fact, we got two very prominent women within the community that are going to be blamed very early on during the trial process, that being Martha Corey and Rebecca Nurse. Both of them were very devoted, very prominent Puritan women within the Salem community. And so now we see that this hysteria has really taken hold in the entire community. And not only were these women important members of the community, they were also considered to be enemies of the Putnams. So there's kind of this element of maybe this whole thing was kind of a Putnam conspiracy going throughout Salem. Now, it is going to be Giles Corey, Martha's husband, that is going to be the one that's pressed to death. Martha Corey is a 72-year-old woman at the time that she is accused. And Giles is going to stand up and say, wait a minute, there's no way this God-fearing woman, this elderly woman, is a witch and going and bewitching this girl. It's just not happening. And that causes Giles to get accused himself. And when he refuses to give a plea, he doesn't plead anything. He stays silent during his trial. They sentence him to death by pressing, and they press him to death by putting heavy stones on his chest. For 2 days, they just keep adding more and more of these heavy stones on his chest. And the last words that we know that Giles actually said are, more weight. And so now Salem is really ingrained in these trials. In June of 1692, Bridget Bishop is going to be the first woman that is hung during the trials. She is a woman that was accused of witchcraft strictly because of the way she dressed. People accused her of dressing in all black, wearing torn clothing, basically not being Puritan enough. And she is among the first group that is hung. Then in July, mid-July, Rebecca Nurse, Sarah Good, and 3 other women are going to be hung. And in fact, Sarah Good is said during her trial, after her sentence is read out by the judge, she looks at the judge and says, I am no more a witch than you are a wizard. So we have a lot of this defiance happening. The next round of executions actually includes the former Reverend of Salem, the Reverend known as George Burroughs, who during his time in Salem made a lot of enemies as well. We know Salem was hugely divided, and so Burroughs kind of got up in that or got caught up in that. And he actually is accused himself. He was actually accused of being the ringleader of all of this. And he's sentenced to hang. But when he is on the gallows, he recites the Lord's Prayer perfectly, which is important because no witch should, or wizard actually, should ever be able to recite the Lord's Prayer perfectly in the minds of a Puritan. The devil simply wouldn't allow that to be the case. And Burroughs does it. And so it's with that action alone that people slowly begin to start thinking that maybe things have gone too far. Maybe this whole accusing thing is getting a little out of hand. The next month, Martha Corey is going to be hung as well. So we have these kind of final rounds of executions carried out. And to put it into perspective, how far people believe these witch trials had gone, we have the Mathers family. You have Increase and Cotton Mathers. They are at the top of the colonial church at this point, and they're interesting figures because they both support as well as condemn the witch trials as they move forward. They completely 100% supported the finding of witches. They knew that witchcraft was something that plagued humanity, and they felt that it was the church's responsibility to hunt down and basically take that witchcraft out. However, the Mathers family did not believe in what is called spectral evidence, which is what was used during the witch trials. Spectral evidence is basically not physical evidence. All of the people in Salem were convicted and executed or imprisoned with no physical proof that they were guilty of anything. It was all based on accusation and rumor. That was it. And Increase Mathers is quoted as saying of the witch trials, "It were better that 10 suspected witches should escape than that one innocent person should be condemned." So you have the top of society in terms of a religious standpoint that are saying, while we support what you're trying to do, we don't necessarily support the way you've gone about doing it. So the Salem Witch Trials provide us with an important window into the way we think about our world today. If we use the term witch hunt, we can destroy any accusation or any investigation that is happening in our world right now. Today's witch hunts are the ghosts of Salem's past, the political ghost and the social ghost of what occurred in 1692. Tituba, the slave that sparked the witch trials in the first place, serves a double purpose. Her identity as an African slave, or a native slave for that matter, becomes a symbol for oppression in this country. And while her label as a bringer of the devil, that serves as a warning for outsiders in society. So Salem, even though it was so long ago, provides us with important context in today's world. With that, that's been the Salem Witch Trials. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave me comments. I enjoy reading them. Have a great day, guys. See ya.